The briefing room aboard the Varnix dreadnought smelled faintly of ozone and hydraulic fluid, a side effect of being orbit-parked too long near sulfur-rich moons. Lieutenant Commander Brask didn't mind. He was too preoccupied with the images beaming across the holotable. Spindly diagrams of Earth's atmosphere, a rotating sphere highlighting continents, red markings blinking across terrain zones. And next to all that, the projected form of a man shirtless, flexing, and laughing like he just found the concept of war hysterical. Brask's thin brow twitched. "You expect me to believe this is a threat?" he asked, gesturing to the image. "No," growled Commander Vitrak. "That is Staff Sergeant Cole Wexler. He's the demonstration." "Demonstration of what?" Brask's tone soured. "Human absurdity? They sent this boulder with vocal cords to a joint planetary defense drill?" The human had been late. Wexler strolled onto the landing pad an hour after the welcome protocol ended, carrying a duffel bag over one shoulder like it weighed nothing, which was suspicious because the duffel housed reinforced exo-armor plates. 4 standard Varnex handlers had to use an anti-grav dolly to move theirs. Cole didn't even break a sweat. "It's the gravity," muttered Brask's adjutant, clicking a control that brought up Earth specs. 9.8 meters per second squared. Somehow these beings evolved in a pressure field strong enough to compress titanium if you stack it long enough. They train in that environment like it's a joke. Brask stared at the data, then back at Wexler's laughing face. "And we're expected to share combat doctrine with them? Please." The Planetary massacre happened because the Zern underestimated recoil physics, not because someone deadlifted a hover tank. "The Planetary didn't have coal," Vitrak said, tapping the table. "The tank came into play 3 days later." The joint planetary exercise was held on Valkyr 2, a moon with near-Earth gravity and an arid atmosphere. Its terrain was perfect for ground maneuvers, cracked orange soil, jagged hills, and valleys wide enough to conceal armored convoys. The goal was straightforward: defend the uplink towers against simulated insurgents. 2 combined squads, 1 human, 1 Varnix, per sector. Cole's squad got Zone Theta, the most exposed zone, where insurgents could approach from 5 directions. "Don't worry," Wexler said, thumbing his earpiece while checking his pulse monitor. "I've got a warm-up routine that should intimidate anyone with a nervous system." Brask stood next to his own squad's lead tactician, arms crossed, eyeing Wexler with restrained disdain. "Your warm-up routine is irrelevant. What matters is coordination, angles, and energy output. Our tanks weigh 4 tons, yours hover, and yours leak oil when you brake too hard." Cole muttered. "Excuse me?" "Nothing," Wexler said, cracking his neck. The Varnix tank in question was a Lorac Class GTR, a squat and bristling fortress of reinforced alloys, armed with twin plasma cannons and an automated countermeasures suite. It didn't hover, it stomped. And when the drill began, it took a single gust of wind to wedge it sideways into a rut on a rocky incline. "Drive system failure," the pilot barked. "We're stuck." "Deploy repair unit," Brask ordered, already pulling up diagnostic charts. "No time," Wexler said over the comms. "That slope's exposed. We're sitting tucks. Then we will initiate fallback." "Nope. Give me 10 seconds. Before Brask could reply, Wexler had already jogged up the incline, leaving 2 humans gawking behind him. The slope was brutal, at least 60 degrees, and the tank was deeply embedded into loose stone. The Varnix command line expected a salvage operation, maybe some emergency lifts. What happened instead was recorded on 8 body cams, 3 drones, and the high-orbit recon platform. Wexler dropped his helmet, squared his stance, wrapped his fingers under the tank's frontal plating, and lifted. At first it looked like a joke. His boots dug in, his biceps bulged, tendons rising like steel cords under the skin. The tank shifted half an inch, dust trembled. Then came the roar. It wasn't from the tank. It was from him. A raw, primal shout that ripped out across the valley and echoed back like a challenge. With a full-body surge, Cole hoisted the 4-ton behemoth an inch, then 2, then cleared it off the ground with a grinding lurch and rotated it 90 degrees before letting it slam back down on flat terrain. The ground shook. Silence followed. Brask's jaw clicked shut. "Tank repositioned," Wexler said, panting slightly. "Now, how about you adjust that threat matrix?" It was the only time in the entire exercise that every Varnix unit paused their operation to watch the playback. In Sector Gamma, a scout tripped over his own boots watching the footage. In Sector Alpha, 2 officers ordered re-evaluations of Earth's biological threat tier. And back at Central Command, Vitrick choked on his hydration gel. But Cole didn't swagger afterward. His hand trembled when he took off his gloves, and a medic had to pull him aside to scan his forearms. Torn muscle fibers, bruising along the scapula, mild tendon stress in both elbows. "Nothing torn through," the medic said, impressed. "You're lucky." "I know," Cole said, grinning. "Lucky gravity's on my side." He took the rest of the day off with his arms packed in ice and didn't so much as lift a canteen without groaning. But no one mocked Earth's gravity again. Especially not Brask, who now sat in the debrief room staring at the playback on loop, muttering, "He benched a tank, he benched a tank." And for the first time since the drill began, he didn't have a single objection. 2 days after the incident, Cole still hadn't fully straightened his left arm. The base medical center on Valkyr 2 had patched him up with muscle regeneration gel and told him to keep it rested, which he mostly obeyed, except when the vending machine jammed, or when he decided his bunk was too stiff and moved it mattress, frame, and all onto the balcony. There in the open air, under a patchy lavender sky, he reclined, with a compression sleeve on one arm and a hydration pouch in the other. He wasn't basking in glory. He was just sore. Meanwhile, Brask hadn't spoken to him once since the tank incident. Not in the corridors, not during inter-squad briefings, not even when Cole casually pointed out that one of the Varnex recon drones had its navigation polarity reversed. Because spinning in circles is a very specific maneuver, man. Brask simply logged the incident, then spent the evening reviewing gravitational tolerances in Varnex physiology manuals. He wasn't mad anymore. He was caught, but the higher-ups weren't so quiet. Command back on the Varnex homeworld had flagged the footage as potentially disruptive to doctrinal parity, which in less polite terms meant explain how one human broke our physics. So they did what all militaries do when they don't understand something. They scheduled another test. This time it wasn't a war game. It was a comparative exercise. Physical trials, human versus Varnex, side by side, with every movement tracked, logged, and reviewed. Lifting tests, endurance trials, stress load maneuvers. Nothing heroic, just pure data. Cole almost didn't make it through warm-up. "This is idiotic," he muttered, wincing as he did light curls with a resistance bar. "I just fixed the ligament in this arm." "Then don't use that arm," said Ava Mercer, the medic assigned to monitor his vitals. "They want to see a range of performance, not break you again." "Great, so I'm a cautionary tale now." "You were always a cautionary tale, now you're a famous one." The Varnex side had brought their elite, hardened infantry with reinforced tendon clusters and muscular routing that looked like someone tried to re-engineer antelope mechanics for bipedal use. They were fast, agile, efficient. They just weren't strong. Cole outlifted the heaviest Varnex by nearly 300 pounds on the leg press. He didn't gloat. He didn't celebrate. He simply nodded, iced his knee, and sat down while the aliens stared. On the shuttle back to base, one of the Varnex asked quietly, "Is your planet composed of metal?" "No," Cole said. "It's mostly water." The Varnex blinked. "Then why train your legs like you move tectonic plates?" "Because if you don't, some idiot might drop a tank on your head one day." Brask overheard that. He didn't scoff this time. He simply took out his datapad and made a note. Humans display a disturbing overlap between sarcasm and tactical reasoning. That same night, the Varnex requested access to human resistance training programs. Cole didn't even know they had biceps until one asked him where to buy dumbbells. But the story of the tank had already spread. It wasn't a rumor anymore. It was a meme. Soldiers from 6 different species started referencing it during equipment checks. One Zafari sharpshooter asked if she should try lifting the comm tower like Wexler. A Corinne heavy trooper built a miniature tank out of alloy scraps and offered it to Cole as a personal gym starter kit. He laughed at that one. He even kept it on his bunk. But it also meant the bar was set permanently high. So when the final stage of the joint exercise came, a multi-species infiltration simulation under real-time threat conditions, everyone expected Wexler to carry something: a plasma cannon, an escape pod, maybe the entire squad. Instead, he collapsed, halfway through the canyon sprint, flat on his face, gasping, vision blurring. Mercer was the first to reach him. She pulled his helmet off and scanned his vitals. "You're overheating. Pulse is 160 and climbing. Dehydration's kicking in." "I drank 2 liters before we started," Cole rasped. "You sweated out 3? The Varnick squad didn't laugh. They watched, silent, as the base medic crew loaded Wexler onto a stretcher and carried him back to the evac zone. Brask didn't speak until they were gone. Then he said, quietly, "Even gravity can be betrayed by biology." They finished the exercise without him. Cole spent the next 24 hours in a hydration chamber with 2 IV lines and a thermal blanket. His recovery was slow but steady. By the next evening, he could sit up without dizziness. By morning, he was walking. Mercer briefed him on what he missed. "You scared the hell out of them," she said. "Not with the tank, not with the sprint, with the fall. They finally saw what a limit looks like for you. I thought. I already showed them that when I nearly tore both arms out of their sockets. You made it look like it was worth it that time." Cole leaned back, groaning. "I hate being a metaphor." "You're not a metaphor," she said, handing him a protein bar. "You're a problem they can't explain." By the time he returned to the squad, Brask greeted him with a short nod. Then, after a long pause, he said, "We've added a strength tolerance buffer to our emergency evacuation protocols, based on your specs. You expect me to carry someone next time?" "No, we expect you to survive." Brask looked him up and down. "If that's acceptable?" Cole smiled without smugness. "Yeah, it is." And for once, Brask didn't look skeptical. The medal came in a plain silver box without ceremony. It wasn't an award, not officially. The Varnicks didn't give medals to non-citizens, and Cole certainly hadn't filled out the 3 forms required for foreign hero designation, but there it was, shaped like a downward-pointing spear with a weight etched at the tip. The inscription, in Varnick glyphs, translated loosely to "stabilizing force under duress." Cole held it up to the light, then quietly put it in the drawer next to his regulation socks and the photo of his sister's dog. He didn't need it, but he kept it. What mattered more was that his training requests were now being approved without delay. Resistance sleds, delivered. Extra protein allotments, authorized. Custom loadout vest designed to balance spine compression during heavy lifts, installed within a day. It wasn't hero worship, it was curiosity wrapped in respect. Brask had even started asking questions. Not sarcastic ones, real ones. Why do you overbuild your muscle density if exo support exists? Because exosuits fail, muscle doesn't, not unless you overheat in a canyon. Do you have contingency plans for equipment collapse? Cole pointed to his own arms. Yeah. That's the plan. What followed was something no one had expected. The Varnicks initiated a joint tactical workshop, one led by humans, with Cole at the front. He didn't like public speaking, and he didn't want to be seen as some flexing caricature, so he focused on what mattered: biomechanics, injury thresholds, torque under environmental load. Mercer helped organize the modules. Brask watched from the back every session, taking notes without a word. On the 3rd day, a junior Varnex asked what Cole's max deadlift was. He paused. 450, he said. But that's just raw, no suit. There was a moment of stunned silence, followed by the sound of someone dropping their stylus. It wasn't just the number, it was what it meant in gravitational equivalency. That kind of power output from unaugmented tissue had implications for battlefield gear, environmental training, even evacuation protocols. That's when the proposal came. Not from Varnick's command, from the planetary coalition itself. They wanted to simulate a multi-vector siege, a full-scale exercise involving urban defense under hostile fire. Simulations. The aim was to test joint species response, but also stress the very limits of each participant's physical and mental load. And they wanted Cole as a live variable. "Excuse me," he said during the call. "I'm not a variable. I'm a person." "Yes," the envoy said. "That's why you're valuable. You react. Machines don't." The plan was simple. Embed Cole as a civilian responder in a simulated collapse zone. He'd be unarmed, under trapped conditions, and the test would gauge whether elite units could work alongside an unpredictable, high-exertion ally during high-risk rescue. He had 3 conditions: no real injuries, a hydration pack at all times, and full clearance for emergency withdrawal if things went sideways. Rask signed off on all of it. "Why?" Cole asked. "Because the rest of the galaxy needs to see what gravity gave you," Rask replied, "and what it costs." The simulation began at dawn. A fabricated city grid, half-ruined buildings, smoke generators, and buried impact zones. Cole was inserted first, wearing a basic responder harness and a headset. He took position under a collapsed building segment surrounded by crushed polymer blocks and faux steel beams. The Varnick squads arrived 30 minutes later, encountering civilian dummies, unstable structures, and coded hazard zone. Then came the alert: human trapped, no suit, structural risk. What happened next became doctrine. The Varnick squad reached the zone, assessed the blockage, and radioed in for reinforcement. The beam pinning Cole's leg was simulated, but heavy. Too heavy for any of them to shift without risking collapse. Cole shifted under the weight, groaning through his comm. "I've got 10 minutes of oxygen left in this rig." Rask's voice came over the squad channel. "Attempt to reinforce perimeter. Do not attempt full lift without assessment." But Cole was already moving. His leg wasn't pinned hard. It was angled under the beam just enough to simulate pressure. And with a surge of core strain and careful breath control, he planted his elbows under the debris and pushed. Slow, deliberate, like he was playing chess with gravity. The beam moved, not much, but enough. One Varnick tried to assist, nearly toppling. Another scanned the stress markers and swore. The numbers didn't add up. The third watched in silence as Cole repositioned his feet, rolled sideways, and shoved the support clear. Dust and debris scattered. Cole crawled forward and sat panting, drenched in sweat, his breath ragged. "You moved that on your own," one Varnick whispered. "Would have been easier with help," Cole said, coughing. "Where were you guys?" "We didn't think it was safe." No kidding, it wasn't. But I wasn't going to wait to die in a training sim. That line went viral within hours. Rask pulled him aside later. "Do you realize you just bypassed 28 safety protocols?" "Yeah," Cole said. "But I also demonstrated real-world stress response under isolation. Isn't that what you wanted?" Rask stared at him, then handed over a data pad. On it were schematics for a new training module. Human Contingency Integration, Phase 1. "You've become an emergency doctrine," Rask said. "I'm not sure whether to be alarmed or impressed." "Be both," Cole replied, flexing his bruised shoulder. "That's the human way." Recovery took longer this time. Straining under compressed conditions re-aggravated his old tendon microtears. Mercer grounded him for 6 days. Cold therapy, soft brace, no lifting above shoulder height. Cole didn't complain. He knew the cost. But when he returned to active duty, the tank was waiting for him again. Not in a combat zone. On a pedestal, painted silver, with a new plaque below. Gravitational compliance artifact, lifted during the Theta exercise by Earth native SSG Cole Wexler. Brask stood beside it, unreadable. "You put a tank in a museum?" Cole said, blinking. "We put your defiance in a museum," Brask replied. Cole didn't smile, but he reached out and gently touched the beam he'd once lifted, as if confirming it had truly happened, that his pain had meant something. And for the first time, the weight didn't feel so heavy. The museum dedication was short, functional. Varnic's culture didn't believe in applause. Instead, they used acknowledgement nodes, blinking markers on their chests that pulsed in gratitude. As Cole stood near the silver-painted tank, watching dozens of blinking lights glow like distant beacons, he realized he hadn't just become a name in a file. He'd become a metric. But metrics, he reminded himself, weren't people. They didn't bleed. They didn't have to explain torn muscle sheaths to an overworked medic who had to ice wrap your elbows at 2 a.m. while muttering about gravity-fueled maniacs. So he grounded himself. He returned to his standard duties. No exhibitions, no lifting contests, just drills, patrols, and occasional lectures where he sat in the back, content to listen while someone else spoke. The tank incident had etched itself into every operational report within a 10-system radius. Cole didn't need to say anything. His body had already screamed it. Yet for all that, something unexpected emerged from the dust, a new project. Joint research, co-led by Mercer and a Varnic xenobiologist named Selk. They called it the GRA Initiative, Gravitational Resilience and Adaptation in Humans. The name was clunky, but the findings weren't. It turned out Earth-native muscle structure didn't just tolerate stress, it thrived on it. Repetitive high-resistance training under 1G conditions led to biochemical reactions that no other species in the Alliance replicated. Varnic's muscles, elegant and efficient, failed at high-load torsion. Zafari bones, light and fast, splintered under human-style impact. The humans weren't stronger by default. They were shaped by struggle, evolved to carry, lift, and drag, to hoist the wounded, to dig their own bunkers when shelter failed. Cole wasn't a miracle. He was a consequence. That, more than anything, was what stunned the scientific board when he demonstrated the improvised triage sled maneuver 6 weeks later. It was a late-night emergency drill meant to simulate zero-support field rescue. A hypothetical ambush, no vehicles, no power grid, just terrain and what you could carry. Cole carried Selk, all 280 pounds of him, wrapped in a pressure suit, strapped to a hoverboard with the power off. The footage showed Cole dragging him up a scree-covered incline, one leg braced at a time, sweat pouring, breath ragged, mumbling motivational nonsense under his breath. "You're lucky you're on my cardio day, Selk. You're gonna rupture a disc," Selk wheezed. "I don't have discs. I am discs." They reached the beacon site 17 minutes later. The board went silent for a full hour. That night, Selk sent him a message. "You redefined our understanding of survivability." Cole stared at the message for a long time, and replied, "I just didn't want to let you die in a fake canyon." Recovery again was slow, less dramatic this time, but the whispers had shifted. No longer just awe. Now, protocols. Other species began adopting load-bearing drills, stretching routines, resistance regimens borrowed from Earth field manuals. The Kern even developed an exoshell that mimicked human spine movement, citing functional modeling from Sergeant Wexler's posture under load. Cole didn't ask for credit, but he got a plaque anyway. This time, back home at Fort Meriton, above the doorway to the Tactical Conditioning Wing. Strength is a story written in gravity. He liked that one. The official discharge came 6 months later. Not because he broke anything else, just because his tour ended. No drama, just a handshake, a data packet of commendations, and a long flight home. The last time Brask spoke to him was during the departure protocols. "You altered our doctrine," Brask said. "I lifted a stuck vehicle," Cole replied. "No, You proved that resilience isn't about perfection. It's about pushing when your body says stop. Cole blinked, surprised. Brask hesitated, then added, "Your gravity broke more than our tank. It broke our certainty." The shuttle bay doors opened, bathing the corridor in golden light from the orbiting sun. Cole turned back only once, gave a short nod, then stepped aboard. Earth felt heavier than he remembered. Or maybe that was just the jet lag. Either way, when he walked into Fort Meriton's mess hall and saw the old gym, the familiar weights, the chalk-smeared benches, it felt right. Familiar. Human? A recruit waved at him, young, barely through basic. "Are you the guy who lifted the alien tank?" the kid asked. Cole paused, grinned. "No," he said. "I'm the guy who nearly dislocated both arms doing something stupid." Then he stepped into the gym, picked up a barbell, and began again. Because that's what Earth taught him. Gravity doesn't care who you are, but it sure as hell builds character.